Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining the first Knowledge Talk. My name is Claudia Lux, and I'm an acquisition editor in the field of library and information science at De Gruyter. According to architect Ike Miersch-Süß, editor and president of SMAO Future Foundation, the planned Knowledge Talk series will connect the topic from her brand new publication, Libraries and their Architecture in the 21st Century, with places of knowledge and the avant-garde of knowledge society. Our talk today on International Museums Day, with the title Knowledge for All, Art is not a privilege, information is not a privilege, the new role of the Uffizi, will be between Professor Dr. Claudia Lux, honorary professor at Humboldt University Berlin and former IFLA president. Hello, welcome. And Professor Dr. Eike Schmidt, director of the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. Welcome. Thank you very much for being with us to discuss the new role of the Uffizi, Florence, and the opening of knowledge to a wider society. Before we get started, just some quick technical remarks. I should let you know that the talk is being recorded and an edited version will be uploaded to our YouTube channel and our digital events page. The video will also be available on the website of SMAO Future Foundation. We will be promoting the event on our social media channels. The participants of the Zoom meeting are muted, but please write your questions in the chat. We will answer your questions after or during the talk, during the discussion. So let us begin. The floor is yours, Claudia.
Thank you so much, Claudia. So I'm very happy today that we can start on the International Museums Day, and it's a privilege to have the director of the Uffizi, Dr. Eike Schmidt, who is also honorary professor at Humboldt, so we're very happy colleagues. Here, and when we talk about knowledge for all, I think he is a very special person to talk about. Art is not a privilege. And please, Dr. Schmidt, please start with your talk.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to both Claudias here. And it's really a pleasure to be here to speak with a view into the Laurentian Library, but also with a tiny little part of the Uffizi's own library behind my image about the role of a museum, of the museums in general, for knowledge society. What's the role of the institution? What can be the role of the institution? And especially, of course, compared to libraries being the primary institutions, which are often absolutely in a justified manner being seen as the primary forays of knowledge into society outside of the circles of academia. So I want to start with two things. One is that, in fact, in the Uffizi, maybe it's not so much me, but it's the Uffizi as an institution that has a role in this context, because the Uffizi has been the first major princely collection which has been opened to the general public in 1769, so a quarter of a century before the Louvre even. Before that, it was, as all princely collections, there was a certain public accessibility with letters of recommendation that the princes of the home duchies or the archbishops might have written to young artists traveling to Italy, and then with these letters of recommendation, it was up to the Grand Duke's secretary to decide whether they would let somebody in or not. And of course, royalty and nobility was generally admitted. It was a part of the diplomacy of receiving visitors in Florence, showing them the galleries, and if there were scholarly needs or scholarly motivations to see the gallery, of course, this was also there was a very, very limited possibility to do so. This all changed fundamentally in the spirit of the Enlightenment, thanks to Grand Duke Peter Leopold, who also happened to be the same Grand Duke to enact an agrarian reform, which was certainly the most notable agrarian reform prior to the French Revolution, but also the first Grand Duke to abolish the death penalty. So one could say that in the 18th century, the Grand Duchy of Tuscany was far more modern than most countries are today in the year 2021. And including that was opening the museum to visitors, not just the Uffizi, but also other museums. In fact, in the 18th century, the Uffizi was visited on average by 5 to 10 visitors per day. These times are long gone. Now we have just reopened after the latest pandemic lockdown, and we get approximately 3,000 visitors every day now. But in terms of the capacity before the arrival of the pandemic, we even had 10,000 visitors per day. So we're down to about a third. Times have changed clearly, but the Uffizi, which, as the name says, was built as an office building and then converted into an art collection, an art gallery, also has as its core, in fact, at its very core, it had two other, well, it still has one, but it had a theater inside the building, which did not, I mean, hasn't been, it's been replaced in the 19th century by an archive, and later on by our prints and drawings collection. And also it has a library, and that's really a core. It used to be, by the way, the National Library of Florence from 1865 to 1934. After that, the National Library was transferred into its new building. And in fact, Italy is one of the few nations that have two national libraries, one in the capital in Rome and the other one in Florence, which continues here. And they get per law a copy of every single printed item which is printed in Italy, and of course now going also forward into very much into the digital sphere. The library in the Uffizi now is a specialized library, an art historical library, but we also invite people to come and check out our holdings. It's open. Of course, it's not ticketed. There's no, we have really more like the visitors to the museum in the 18th century now to the library. So we need to do something on that. On the museum side, however, in this 21st century, we were in a situation which, in fact, was characterized by a double-pronged approach. I mean, there was, on the one hand, people who had a very elitist approach, claiming that the works of art would really be only worthwhile to be seen by the specialists. And I have to say, many museum directors in the past decades had such an approach. And lending them to exhibition would only put them in harm's way. It would be a huge risk. And so the best thing for a work of art would be to be stored safely and nobody seeing them. So that's one radical approach. But there's also the other approach that was looking only at tourism. And in fact, the presence and the pressure of mass tourism, in fact, made it difficult for people to come and see the collections. And especially for those people who should have been really interested and who should have been in a position to take something from the museum experience, to make it a regular experience. Like the library, you don't go into a library to just read one book and then you never ever come back, hopefully. And the same thing is true of a museum. You shouldn't just go into a museum to take your snapshot, your selfie before the 2 or 3 most famous paintings and then never come back. You have to go regularly, and that really will also, you will learn a lot, not just about art, but also about society. And pretty much, I mean, art is such a rich source, both of knowledge, but also inspiration, of creative inspiration, that I think it can be fully compared and should be fully compared to library. In fact, looking at the history of the field, which has been most open in in opening up further to society or the education department, I think it's no coincidence that the founder of museum education in the United States, John Cotton Dana, was originally a librarian and the director of a library before he then founded the New York Museum of Art, which still exists today and flourishes again today. And before him, there was no such thing as museum education in American museums. Germany had, of course, Alfred Lichtwark already 20 years earlier. And again, this is very interesting how he conceived of the museum for society, and especially for young people, because and that brings us to another institution apart from the theater and apart from the library, and that is school. Yes, indeed. I mean, schools have a fundamental role, but even young people outside of it. At the Uffizi, I'll just say this very briefly, we have embraced the ideals of opening the museum to society, to citizens, and especially to young citizens. In fact, that's been one of our objectives, primary objectives, and we've implemented several different means to do so. One of them is to put down the bar, the threshold, to get young people, children and teenagers, young adults into the museum, and not just we have already had for quite a while free entrance for people up to 18 years, and we also added a symbolic entrance fee of €2 for people from 19 to 25, and that helps, but it's not enough. Just that alone really helps in an almost not measurable way, but it's still important to have the free entrance or the strongly discounted entrance, because once you go beyond that, once you offer something tangible and concrete, you don't want to put up any economic barriers. But it's a precondition. It's not already the thing in and by itself. What we did is especially to conceive of a digital offering. So we are active now on 6 different social media channels, of which our most important one, Instagram, we have far more than 600,000 followers now, and it's also very international. 2/3 of them are from all over the world, 1/3 is Italian, and well, what we notice on all our social media channels and on our website is that we have at least 60% female users, and but in some instances 70 to 75% female users, and I think this is also very important when it gets to younger generations to be opened really to all. And with apart from Instagram, which is very strong between 20 and 50, basically. I mean, that's our basic demography behind Instagram as far as the followers and also the interactions are concerned. We wanted to go even more towards the young people with TikTok. And with TikTok, we're using an autoironic language, which was very successful. Indeed, there are many, well, there are few museums on TikTok, but today, for instance, being the International Museum Day. There is one initiative with museums from all over the world. Every museum has a live broadcast on TikTok for 30 minutes. It's our turn at 3 p.m. European time. But there are many other museums from Asia to America that participate, and one also from Germany. So we have, but on TikTok generally, those museums that are on TikTok have kind of smaller, shorter versions of what they offer also on other channels. We deliberately did not want to do that, but we really embraced the auto-ironic language of young people, and that turned out to be very successful. But we went beyond that. We have also constructed, and that again I have to say that the pandemic was very useful to kindle things that we wanted to do already, but they forced us to think about it, and we now offer virtual rooms for classes, for elementary school classes all over Italy. And we've been doing 1,000 of these sessions with one of our museum educators, and then classes spread really throughout the entire country. And this includes some classes, for instance, elementary schools in the mountains, where they have maybe two first graders and one second grader and 3 fourth graders mixed together. So people who would never, ever come to a museum now and never be in touch, would probably not care about a museum. And these are individual experiences that last 1 hour. What we've heard basically from close to 100% of them is that they actually, as soon as they will be able to travel again, they want to come to the museum. Now, we know that it's not just a hope or a promise, but it's more than that, because when we opened last year in June, we were actually able to almost double our attendance of people under 25. Now, more than 1/3 of our visitors in the museum are up to 25 years old, which is completely different from before. And especially in the age group 19 to 25, we far more than doubled the number of attendees. And now we're observing the same thing. So this is a constant trend, a lasting trend. Our building, of course, is a historic building, a 16th century building. So we can't do very much in terms of architecture to make it more inviting. However, Giorgio Vasari built, who was the architect in the 16th century, built a facade which is very, very transparent. In fact, there's one of the 3 wings which goes to the Arno. You can actually look from the other side of the Arno through the windows, through both windows of the building, towards the Piazza della Signorias, through the civic center of town. And so this transparency, this openness, we fortunately have inherited in the architecture. What we do internally, and I stop with that because I know that my time is pretty much up, but what we do inside is, for instance, we started to lower some paintings that young visitors, children love particularly. We have one painting by Fra Angelico, which shows the scenes of the monks in the desert with their dogs, with their lions, with all other fantasy animals, which children used to love. And so at one point I decided that we lower it to 65 centimeters above the floor. And so we put a protective glass before it, which is a new generation glass, the same we use for our masterpieces, anti-attack glass, so nothing can happen to these. But it's also a glass with only 0.08% of reflection. So what we are very happy is that we every morning when our cleaners clean the glass, they always find nose prints on the glass. little boys and little girls. And now that it's more accessible, as it's closer, it's even, I mean, children stand there and even more. So it's part of their world. That just as one example, I mean, how you can do this even in a historic building. And I could go on further, but I know my time's up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really so wonderful examples. And are there any questions from the audience? No. Okay, but I have one. So my question is, from what age onward children are allowed to come alone to the Museum of the Uffizi?
Well, generally, from 12 years onwards, but I mean, it depends also, because I mean, the different national laws. So we have international visitors, and some Americans technically need their parents' permissions for everything they do until they're 21. But I mean, this is of course something very unusual. I mean, generally, I think in most European countries it's that age. And I know that there are there's one museum, the Frick Collection in America, that doesn't allow children under 14 into the museum. I mean, the case that we have children coming alone is rare. However, I mean, I made an appeal recently, and it was half ironic, but it was only half ironic. And I said, well, I mean, if school children really want to skip school, they shouldn't go to a cafe to go drink. They should come to the Uffizi, because there they will enjoy themselves, but they will also learn something. And actually, I mean, we had repeatedly then groups of children, maybe 13, 14 years. It was more like the age group of 13, 14, 15, 16 years old that came to us and said, well, yes, we have school, but we come to you because we saw the invitation by the director, and we come. And of course, I mean, should someone come every morning, that would be a problem, but that never happened, actually. So, and I truly think, I mean, it's much better than just sitting around in a cafe, and it's much better to come to the museum.
Now we have one question. Thank you for such a wonderful presentation, sir. Can you please name the founder of history education who was initially a librarian?
Yes, that is the founder of museum education in the United States of America, John Cotton Dana. So D-A-N-A is his last name. Well, Cotton Dana is his last name, and John is his first name. So he was a very flamboyant personality in late 19th century, early 20th century in America. He also actually was fundamental in opening up libraries for groups that normally wouldn't have come to library. For instance, he instituted sections on agriculture, on economy in libraries. Subjects that would interest people who would never otherwise come to a library. And also, very important, exactly here, we've got a reference from Rutgers libraries on him. In fact, he also opened sections in different European languages, in different languages of immigrants, because it was the time of immigration from Germany, for instance, from Italy to the United States. And so he furnished libraries with books in the languages of immigrants, who then came immediately to the libraries he directed. And his idea was to do something similar with the Newark Museum of Art, which still exists today, and which in fact, is very strong even today in involving African Americans. So New York is a city which has this a very strong population of African Americans, and if you go to New York City, you will see a very small fraction of visitors that are actually African American, despite the fact that there are many in New York, of course, but clearly there is a bias in New York. I mean, this has been worked on for years now, and I mean, it's a very, very positive experience.
We have another question. Please tell us something about the relation between library, documentation, and visual programs of the museum part. It's a question from Birgit Dankert.
Yes, this is a very good question, because it's not just physically that our library is at the heart of the Uffizi, but it's also a very important resource for the documentation and then the visual program. So basically, our documentation, which is a registration and cataloging. So the registration is actually is bundled together with exhibitions, but then we have the cataloging department, where works of art are being cataloged in a scholarly way, and of course all the bibliography relating to the individual works of art are being collected, and in fact, that part, which is the most scholarly part of the activity, is also available on our website if you go into digital archives. That's the digital archives section. So museum curators from other museums can go in there and find the information they need for their research. But we've kept that separate on our website from the actual interpretation of the works of art, the in-depth interpretation through an online scholarly journal, which is published approximately twice a year, and also a more general use magazine, which we have, but also then several different initiatives that all this information feeds into. It's a different department that takes care of that, but they're in close personal relation, of course, because, well, one thing that we offer, that we've started to offer even before the pandemic lockdown, was virtual exhibitions, which we call hypervisions. And these are typically being put together by curators, by museum educators also. These are scholarly publications, but very, very accessible, also in an accessible language, with lots of images. These, of course, could not be done without these scholarly databases, but also regularly, as it always happens when you do some research, you find out something new. I mean, otherwise it wouldn't be worth doing research. And then this, of course, then feeds back into our scholarly document, I mean, into the documentation part, which we call the cataloging department. And what the cataloging department also does is the intellectual part, I mean, not the mechanical, technical part of the digitization of what we have of old inventories and so on. But there would be no point in digitizing inventories or manuscripts or photographs without then actually putting keywords to them, recording the year a photograph was taken, and all of these things. So that's also all done by our cataloging department, which at the moment has, I have to just look at our staff plan to see how many people there are. There are 16 people in the cataloging department right now, and that's different from cataloging books, of course. That's the library department, which has, let me just have a quick look, that has 2, 4, 6, 12. There are 12 people in our library. So, which is pretty much, I mean, unfortunately, again, I mean, that's maybe the one thing that we need to work on more, to get outside visitors. It's a specialized art historical library with some sections on also local and regional history, which are important. I also have to say that Florence is really a paradise for libraries, because there are several specialized art historical libraries. Then there's the National Library, there's the Universität Harvard University, the Max Planck Institute, the Kunsthistorisches Institute Library, and several others, the Renaissance Studies by the Scuola Normale in Pisa. So probably it's that all these people are scattered through these many different libraries. So otherwise we would have far more outside visitors. But the libraries is definitely a very, very fundamental resource for all our internal research needs. And I think we cover pretty much 80 to 90% of our in-house research needs through it. But knowing that there's so many great other libraries around, our staff regularly goes to the other libraries too. So as they come to us, I mean, they come to us typically for manuscripts, because we do have a number of 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th century, and even 20th century manuscripts and archival material. Actually, many square meters of archival material too. But I think it's a very good conjunction between inside and outside researchers.
I think that was a wonderful part to hear to a museum director to talk so engaged and enthusiastic about libraries. Thank you so much. I think
I love libraries. I sit in one, as you see. So
yeah. And it's a very wonderful moment to come to my part on libraries. And it all has to do with knowledge for all, and art is not a privilege as much as information, and libraries are not a privilege. And I'm sitting here, as you can see, in a virtual space of the Michelangelo's Biblioteca Medicea Laurentiana in Florence again, because Florence is really influencing. In a certain time in the 16th century, it has influenced also libraries. And what you cannot see is the chains under each of these lecterns for the libri catinati. But it was still a time when libraries were more open to researchers, even that the books were on chains. It was a different openness to many libraries that have developed before. However, for us today, this means restriction to have libri catinati, and the restriction has changed in libraries in the development, also with the architecture of the library. And it's quite a long way until there was a modern open area library, as we can see in the State Library in Berlin, which was one of those who really are a wonderful example for a wide reading landscape, as you can see here. And this kind of reading landscape also were introduced in many libraries in mostly in the 60s, 70s, and later on, and people can go directly to their books and take them out as much as they wish. And I think this is a democratic openness of libraries in the history of libraries. And developing from this, the library also went to become a kind of living room, from the reading room to the living room. And one of the great examples was Seattle Public Library, and you can see the architecture here from Rem Koolhaas, and it looks a little bit like a garden or it's really a very interesting space, and people go through. There is even a library which is between, it's on one block in the US city of Seattle, and people can walk through, and but it's more important that you can see it's a landscape. And every book is accessible in this library, and it has also introduced then all this new technology which open up libraries in a different way. And this is what we want to show in our book. I will talk about this a little bit later, and want just to show you the way this has changed the architecture in libraries. This is a picture from the Qatar National Library, and it's children of that age we just talked about, 12 years old, 11, 12, maybe a little bit younger, maybe a little bit older. They are sitting here, they're enjoying the space in the library. Many sit there with reading, others just enjoying the view and the way they can use these very new seats in a different way. And it's for them. It's like when you put the picture in the museum on 60 centimeter or 68, then this is something where the children feel it's their space, even that this is the National Library. And it's really, it opens up those traditional high cultural institutions to everybody. And we can see this also for the adults. The adults now, they are not sitting on this with the libri catenati as we have seen before, but they are lying on cushions and enjoy reading and enjoying the atmosphere of the library in an area which is made flexible. A flexible area also here in the National Library of Qatar, to have events there, to have activities with children, with adults, with everybody who wants to partner with the library in events, not only exhibition as was a tradition in libraries before, but with activities, those in an atmosphere, in a big event on this floor, which can be cleaned up for everything new what you can do. And that is a new type of libraries like Aarhus or Helsinki Udi Library. There are many libraries like this, many public libraries who are developing the open space for activities for the readers and for those people who want to communicate and be active with and in the library. And in addition, you have this maker spaces, and this is one of the music maker space, also from the Qatar National Library. And here is a class from the school who is introduced to what they could do, and then there are some activities with them, make their own music, electronic, and develop their interest. There are instruments at the wall, but there's also all this digital technology they can use, and they will use in the future for their way to make music, and that is so important. But also adults can use this, so it's an open space where you can go and you are introduced on how to develop this technology, and it's a maker space. You are the creative person. And for this creativity, libraries are a wonderful place today, with the literature they have, with the information they have, this all together, and then the space for the creativity. That is what the changes are today. And from this, I can show you that there is this, well, a little bit more like, this book about library architecture, and this shows a lot of this new development where the change to do more for open up libraries, as we just heard how to open up museums, open up libraries and information for all also has an impact on the architecture. So this impact on the architecture is shown in this book, and I hope you have the chance to look into it in your library or wherever you like to find it. So thank you so much. If there are any questions, please ask your questions, and we might.
No question at the moment.
No questions, so that's okay. So I want to thank you so much, Professor Dr. Eike Schmidt, for sharing with us this this event, and I'm very happy that you are still going on to the next meeting today. I will try to to look for your TikTok event. I think it's interesting because some libraries are doing this too already, but it's still so important to reach out to the young generation. So thank you, everybody, and back to Claudia Heyer.
Yes, many thanks for this very inspiring talk to both speakers. It was very good, thank you. And also many thanks to all participants for being here. You will get the link to the video in a few days, and please share it with anyone that might be interested. Please check the De Gruyter website and the SMEO Future Foundation website for more information about the next knowledge talks. Again, thanks to everyone for joining us. Okay. And good afternoon or evening. Take care and goodbye. Thank you very much.